Piracy has existed since ancient times. In the first part, we talked about antique pirates and Viking plunders. Today, we will talk about all known Caribbean pirates, as well as about the late European and modern successors of this illegal craft. The Spanish have turned the New World into their source of wealth. Every year, hundreds of galleon ships carried countless quantities of gold, silver, and precious stones from the Caribbean to Spain. Other Europeans also wanted to claim such a fortune, but no one had a navy of their own to oppose the Spanish. Therefore, the Spanish galleons in the Caribbean were robbed by pirates. The first was John Hawkins. He began his pirate career by sailing to West Africa, where he attacked slave-owning ships, depriving black slaves of them and selling slaves to Spaniards in the Caribbean. Over time, he began sailing there from England, not only to sell slaves, but also to attack Spanish ships. Only Francis Drake, who was the disciple of Hawkins, would be able to surpass his teacher. In the Caribbean, he not only attacked Spanish ships, but also robbed cities. Drake tried to rob the coast of Spain and the Azores, though it was not as successful as in the Caribbean. In 1573, he plundered Cologne, one of the richest Spanish cities in America. For this, he received the admiral rank and favor of Queen Elizabeth I. The British called him the Iron Pirate, and for the Spanish, he was known as El Draque. In 1577, Drake set out to pillage Spanish cities in the Pacific. In the process, he learned that the Spanish were preparing an ambush in the Magellan Strait and sailed back west. Thus, Drake made a second voyage around the world. The journey was so successful that Drake brought such an amount of gold to England, which equaled the annual budget of the Crown's treasury of 4 years. When Spain sent the Invincible Armada to England, Drake's ships joined the English Navy, and Francis himself became vice admiral. Although his next expedition to Portugal, then owned by the Spanish, was not successful, he was still officially knighted, which had never been the case with a pirate. However, sailing from Europe to the Caribbean Sea was a long and not always safe affair. Many pirate ships were sinking during the voyage, and those that could return were losing up to half their crew. So very soon, European pirates began to inhabit the islands of the Caribbean Sea. The first settlers were called Buccaneers, and were not only pirates. Even their name indicates their main craft: hunting feral animals and harvesting their meat. In their spare time, Buccaneers engaged in sea robbery. In time, the English, the French, and the Dutch started to hire such pirate gangs to carry out raids against Spain, with which they have fought constantly in Europe. Such pirates the British called privateers. The Dutch knew them as capers, and the French called them corsairs. All pirates who acted without permission were called filibusters. And if against the privateers the Spanish reinforced the sea convoys with additional galleons, the Buccaneers had to be pursued on land. They were most successful in Florida, where they managed to destroy America's first French settlement. By exterminating feral animals, the Spanish were able to expel Buccaneers from most of the Antilles. However, they were unable to capture the island of Tortuga, which was occupied by Buccaneers. Thus, Tortuga for a long time remained a pirate capital of the Caribbean. The French and British fought for it, and the island itself several times passed from hand to hand. It was eventually given to the French due to the naval engineer and pirate captain Francois Levasseur. He became famous for building a military fort on the island and quickly began robbing all the ships, including the French ones. He also established on Tortuga a tyrannical authority over all pirates. And the worst for the pirates was that Levasseur was taxing them heavily. Sometimes he took up to 75% of their loot so that their ships could freely enter the island. This is why Levasseur was killed by his own team during one of the uprisings. The new governor of the island was Bertrand d'Ogeron. Bertrand quickly made contact with major pirate groups and solved a number of acute problems related to food, ship repairs, and women on Tortuga. It was during his governorship that Tortuga was at the height of its pirate power. In the end, d'Ogeron organized 2 failed attacks on the islands of Hispaniola and was captured by the Spanish. Because of this, the island began to decline, and even Buccaneers left it, because over time, there were no animals on the island that they could hunt. Nor did the British relinquish their claim to the Caribbean Sea. Oliver Cromwell organized a pirate campaign in the Caribbean Sea under the command of Admiral William Penn. The campaign failed to meet expectations. Penn managed to capture the island of Jamaica, but he failed to steal enough treasures from the Spanish. The British began recruiting privateers from local pirates, and the Jamaican capital Port Royal became another center of piracy in the Caribbean Sea. The most famous of the English pirates was Henry Morgan. He was a pirate on the ship of the caper Christopher Mings, but Mings soon joined the Royal Navy and ended his capering activities. Then Henry went to the service of Edward Mansvelt as a lieutenant. Edward was at the time the commander of the largest bandit gang in the region, numbering 16 ships and about 500 pirates. After Mansvelt's death, it was Morgan who led his pirate gang. In his first raid as captain, he proved himself a natural-born pirate. Instead of robbing heavily fortified cities on the Cuban coast, he landed on a deserted shore from where he marched on Puerto del Príncipe, a city far from the sea, which has never been raided by the pirates. The raid was a success, and Morgan brought from the city a treasure of 2 million reis. Morgan also demonstrated his military skill in attacking the city of Maracaibo. The Spanish then blocked the entrance of the bay near the city, trapping Morgan's gang. To break out of it, the pirates sent forward the fire ship, which released the exit from the bay. But Morgan's most successful expedition is considered his Panama campaign. For this, he assembled a team of 2,000 pirates. Again, Morgan landed ashore off the city and marched through the jungle for 10 days. Under the walls of the city, in a fierce battle, he defeated the twice-large Spanish garrison and easily captured Panama. The pirates looted the city and surrounding lands for several days. It took them 200 mules to get the captured goods out. In addition, 60 prominent Spaniards were also captured, for which Morgan later received a ransom. There were so many treasures that soon, having sailed to the coast of Costa Rica, the pirates fought among themselves. Morgan collected 400 loyal pirates, their share of the treasure, all the Spanish prisoners, and fled to Jamaica. The rest of the pirates, remaining to quarrel on the coast, were caught up and defeated by the Spanish. In 1675, Morgan became the vice-governor of Jamaica. From that time, his aim was to prosecute the pirates, which he did successfully until his death in 1688. 4 years after Henry's death, the city of Port Royal was destroyed by an earthquake, and its remains fell under a landslide. So now, there is nothing left of the city. While pursuing pirates, Morgan managed to wipe out piracy in the Caribbean. However, a new war in Europe led to a new wave of piracy. The warring parties again began hiring capers to rob each other. There were so many pirates at sea that in 1706 they captured the island of Nassau, where they established a true pirate state. But in 1718, the English expelled the pirates from the island. The most famous pirate in these years became Edward Teach, under the nickname Blackbeard. He was a soldier in the war, and when it ended, Teach joined the pirates from Nassau. For several years, he served under one of the local captains, until in 1716, he himself led the pinnace Queen Anne's Revenge, in which he robbed the British in the Caribbean for 3 years. Blackbeard's most successful raid was the Siege of Charleston, from which the bourgeoisie were able to free themselves only thanks to a significant ransom. That same year, his ship was intercepted by English soldiers under the command of Robert Maynard. Edward Teach was killed in action, and his crew was captured and executed for piracy. Persecuted in the Caribbean, many pirates fled to the Indian Ocean, where they looted merchant ships of the East India Company. The most famous pirate of the Indian Ocean was Henry Every. He led the deserters on the English warship Charles II, captured it, and engaged in robbery, first off the western and then the eastern coast of Africa. He made St. Mary's Island his base, which for a long time would become the center of piracy in this ocean. In 1695, Henry Every captured the Mughal ship with the emperor's granddaughter on it, and soon married her. The pirate Olivier Levasseur, nicknamed La Buse, escaped from Nassau to St. Mary's Island and robbed ships of the East India Company. He was eventually captured by the French in Madagascar and hanged for piracy. Another prominent pirate who escaped from Nassau is Bartholomew Roberts, named Black Bart. He pillaged the west coast of Africa and made Portuguese Brazil his base. Women were also among the pirates. Anne Bonny and Mary Read were the lovers of the pirate John Rackham, also known as Calico Jack. They went out to sea together and engaged in robbery with his pirate crew. When the English intercepted Rackham's ship, both pirates were put on trial. They were sentenced to be hanged along with other pirates. Bonny did not wait for her execution because she died during childbirth in prison. Mary shared the fate of her team. While European pirates pillaged the New World, Europe was plundered by Barbery pirates sailing the Mediterranean. The most famous of them are the brothers Oruç and Hizir Reis. They were sailors of the Ottoman Empire, and after robbing a Turkish merchant ship, they were forced to flee to the Sultan of Tunisia, for whom they served for a long time. In 1516, Oruç Reis captured Algiers, taking it from the Spanish, who had just captured it. In the same year, he plundered the Balearic Islands, for which he became famous among Muslims and got the nickname Barbarossa among Europeans. After Oruç's death, his younger brother Hizir led a pirate gang and took on the nickname of his brother. He returned to the service of the Ottoman Sultan, although he continued his naval raids. For faithful service, Hizir not only received the title of Capudan Pasha, Admiral, but also the position of governor of Algiers, which would be inherited by his descendants. The Knights of the Order of Malta were able to more or less restrain the Barbery Pirates. But in 1797, Napoleon captured Malta and took from the Maltese their fleet. After that, the Barbery Pirates only increased the number of their robberies. They began to pillage not only the Mediterranean, but also sailed to West Africa, attacking European ships. Barbery pirates even demanded money from European countries in exchange for promises to stop attacking them. The young United States suffered the most from these pirates. They declared war on pirates twice, and these were the first in the history of the United States of America wars at sea. After several years of minor fighting and 2 sieges of Tripoli, the Barbery pirates agreed not to attack American ships again. Soon, the British squadron also persuaded the Barbery to promise not to carry out any more raids against the English. The business of the Barbery pirates was finally brought to an end by the French when they conquered North Africa. If European pirates had no more than a few dozen ships, Chinese pirates possessed a much larger amount of vessels. The pirate Admiral Zheng Zhilong rallied the pirate gang from a number of former Chinese soldiers who had escaped the Manchus. It numbered 300 junk ships and 30,000 pirates. With this army, he pillaged the eastern coast of China. His son Koxinga expelled the Dutch from Taiwan and created the pirate kingdom of Tungning. His descendants continued the pirate business for some time, till their state was destroyed by the army of Qing China. The pirate Zheng Yi made Guangzhou his base and had a fleet of 700 junks and about 60,000 pirates. This pirate armada would become known in China as the Red Flag Fleet. Zheng Yi robbed European ships, Chinese peasants, and Malacca merchants. And in 1802, he even declared war on the state of Taisun in retaliation for the execution of his younger brother, who also was a pirate. In this war, he even succeeded in overthrowing the Vietnamese dynasty of emperors. After Zheng Yi's death, the Red Flag Fleet was led by his wife, Zheng Shi, but in 1809 she was defeated by the Qing Portuguese Navy. Zheng Shi then proposed a peace agreement to the Chinese emperor. Surprisingly, he granted amnesty to the pirates because, as it turned out, the Red Flag Fleet was much more combat capable than the Imperial Navy. Thus, the Chinese pirates became the Chinese fleet. Modern-day piracy has begun to re-emerge in poor regions of the world. In Somalia, where civil war has long been ongoing, many people have become involved in piracy. They attack ships sailing near the Horn of Africa, steal crews, and demand ransom. Over time, Somalis have expanded their attacks to most of the waters around Africa. It is the Gulf of Guinea where there are large deposits of oil and there is a possibility of attacking the working oil rigs. Another center of piracy has become the Malacca Strait, where Malaysian pirates are active. They also attack with the aim of taking hostages. Unfortunately, large countries are still unable to completely secure the world's waters from pirates, who today look more like naval terrorists than robbers. Attacks occur annually, but with increased air and sea surveillance from international organizations, the number of pirate attacks has decreased significantly over the past decade.